So, not only are they going ahead with their implementation of sex education into primary school's curriculum, which about 2 or 3 years ago I took issue with when it was a mere suggestion, but not only are they going ahead with it, some of the things that they're intending to include in this education are questionable at best. Boys can have periods too. Children to be taught about in the latest victory for transgender campaigners. School children will be taught that all genders, not just male and female, no, all genders. So already you're alluding to this gender as a spectrum fallacy, but anyway, all genders can have periods and use sex education lessons in a victory for transgender rights campaigners. What the fuck? Now, obviously, to make sure there's no confusion, they're going to have to specify what they mean by all genders. I mean, how many will they teach them about? It's limitless, it's an infinite spectrum. You tell me, I'd love to know. I'm sure my children one day will tell me. The advice to teachers was approved by Brighton, of course, and City Council, and they tried to tackle stigma around menstruation. Well, that's just a fucking cop-out if I've ever heard one. The new advice follows a council report which said trans boys and men and non-binary people may have periods. Oh my god. Just non-binaries. I am so sick of these assholes. That's all they are. You know? Well, let's get one thing quickly clear about non-binaries. Some of them that think they know their stuff. We'll have to bring up to you the ancient cultures had that are recognised a third gender. If you do a little bit of digging, you'll find out, like the one in the ancient Buddhist culture. Funnily enough, they were hermaphrodites, so intersex people, right? Or the hijras, as they're called in India, intersex. Or the Thailand ladyboys, intersex, hermaphrodites, whatever you will, right? There was never one point in time where people just decided, I don't fit into a box, so I'm non-binary, right? And they can't say that they're non-binary and say ancient cultures had non-binary recognised as a third gender. It just doesn't wash your beat. If you're intersex, fine, be my guest, right? Do your thing. But don't fucking sit there and proclaim to me that you are non-binary and expect me to take you seriously when you've got absolutely nothing wrong with your genetics. You've just got a feeling you're non-binary, right? Anyway, so to be more inclusive, right? So this is the latest drive of insanity disguised as diversity and inclusion. Maybe if they hadn't demedicalised the fact that transgender people, as much as the procedure might not necessarily be that of a mental issue / disorder, transgenderism itself is. Then you wouldn't have to go down this road that you're going down of, well, we need to make everyone understand and be inclusive so little Jenny doesn't feel upset that she wants to be called Brian. The report recommends, it calls for transgender students and pupils to be provided with additional support from a school nurse if needed. Yes. The report recommends that language and learning about periods is inclusive for all genders, cultures, faiths and sexual orientations. I'm sure this will be implemented in all of your Muslim schools, your Jewish schools. I've got a funny feeling this will just be in your state-funded schools. For example, girls and boys and others who have periods. What you mean? What, the one kid that might be non-binary, quote unquote, right? Why is non-binaries been included in this? I mean, transgender is fair enough, but non-binaries just get rid of it. By encouraging effective education and administration of puberty, we hope to reduce stigma and ensure no child or young person feels shame in asking for period products inside or outside of school. We believe that it's important for all genders to be able to learn and talk about menstruation together. Our approach recognises the fact that some people who have periods are trans or, oh my god, non-binary. Oh, you recognise that? The council has also recently released a trans inclusion in schools toolkit. Oh, what the hell is going on, man? Ask teachers to be respectful and inclusive of children who are questioning their gender. And why would they be questioning their gender? Because they force this scrap in every aspect of society, then take a step back with all of these solutions they've got for the kids that are going to be affected by the things that they've already put in place to affect them. It's fucking insanity, man. Earlier this year, the Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health urged ministers to go further in their guidance on sex and relationship classes, which will become completely compulsory. They were never compulsory before, when it was just learning about heterosexuality, which they didn't even get taught about, funnily enough. But when they just taught you about the birds and the bees, the basics, it was never compulsory then. But it's compulsory now that there's homoerotica and gender identity inclusion implemented alongside it. Funny that, is it not? Oh, I'm starting to get really riled up, eh? Draft government recommendation says schools are free to determine how to address the LGBT issues, ensuring teachers use is sensitive and age appropriate. I mean, there's never an appropriate time to learn about a gender spectrum because it doesn't exist. Nonetheless, it won't be too long before this part right here. Schools are free to determine how to address. They go a lot about the subject. That'll be changed soon because the LGBT activists aren't happy about that. I've already addressed that in the video I made about the Scottish compulsory LGBT education. The Royal College says there needs to be a clear statement that LGBT and the people and relationships are part of teaching about healthy relationships in primary school. Oh my, primary schools here. Think about this. Primary schools. 4 or 5-year-olds all the way up to 12-year-olds, 11, 12-year-olds, right? So for a good portion of that age bracket, this is completely not necessary at all. This can be demonstrated in relation to families, but it also helps the children to learn the meanings of terms such as lesbian, gay, bisexual. Yeah, but that's not where it stops, though, is it? Man, this is a letter from written to the Independent from last year, right? But it does hold some truth in regards to what these people that are pushing this stuff all across the society, not just the assholes that do the campaigning and the activism, but the people behind the scenes. If we stopped enforcing gender roles from birth, we wouldn't be having this debate, right? If children were treated equally and not driven into stereotypical pigeonholes from birth, there would not be the problem of identifying with a gender. There wouldn't be the problem of identifying with a gender if you people didn't make it a problem. The only people that had a problem were transgenders, but you have made it a wider problem for all. An absolute abysmal drive to pretend that everyone's a blank canvas until they say otherwise, and it's catching on. It's disgusting. It's wrong. It's pretty much based on nothing but mere lies and feelings, and no facts are included, right? The stereotypical pigeonholes in birth. Well, because people have the audacity to say, "Oh, we're having a son because he's got a dick," and the chances are you would have a son. The 99% chance you'd have a son by the time he was a fully mature adult. And the same would go for a girl. The chances are you'd have a female. You'd have a daughter by the time it's a fully mature adult. But these people want you to go, no, don't assume. Don't assume. You don't know. You do not know. Let them choose for themselves. Don't be so presumptuous. Well, I would love to tell you where you can go fuck yourself, but that would be transphobic of me with the nuts. Children treated with true equality because, people that are non-binary, this will press, could be allowed to grow up as balanced individuals. What the hell is balanced about having no idea what the hell you are? And their sexual orientation and identity. Nobody forces sexual orientation on people, bar, okay, yes, religious people, but let's not beat around the bush. None of this stuff is affecting religious people, bar the remaining strands of Christians and Catholics around the joint, who seem to have their churches infected, I've noticed, because their churches seem to be inclusive in this drive to have a shit home, But anyway, this seems to be the new in thing now. I don't know how many articles I've seen popping up over the months. Boy or girl, parents raising babies to let kids decide. Based on what? What trans campaigner and some expert who's written up a gender spectrum have told you? This fucking insanity is madness. Another one. Boy, girl, both? Neither. A new generation overthrows gender. Says who? Based on what? I feel like I'm not binary. I don't fit into the boxes. What boxes? The little boxes the society forces you in? No! These boxes are very broad. And they're, but these people have made out their totty little boxes. So if you don't fit into it, you can just step out. Leap the boundary of gender. Gender identity is different from gender expression, being different from biology. Gender identity, this fanatical word that keeps getting thrown about the place. Now, I have to say, I'm pretty sure when I give it a little bit of thought that it doesn't exist. It does not exist, right? There's boy, girl, male, female. Sex and gender are synonymous, right? And along with that, you could include in there gender expression, if you will. How you go about expressing the fact that you are who you are. Where the hell does gender identity come into it? I don't get it. But I'm sure Adam Chang, the gender spectrum expert, can give us a juicy scoop on this one. Go on, Mr. Chang, enlighten me. Where am I going wrong, mate? A provider of gender identity resources and services. What? Fucking quotes from Tumblr? Oh, the experts have said so. Identity is what you know in your heart and mind, and expression is eternal. It's just what you know in your heart and mind. Isn't it funny that all these people that claim that to be something other than what they were born as have no real idea of who they are? Biology, of course, means the physical attributes that have always been used as a proxy for gender, and for all those are different from sexual orientation. Gender is the way you express yourself to the world, and your sexual orientation is what you go to bed with. David Anderson, who identifies as gender. Oh, of course, he identifies as gender neutral. So these people, you destigmatize transgenders and make it seem as if it's normal, and all of the shit that comes along with it. Then you get the plot. The floor is yours, mate. On you go. Tell the world what is true, right? And of course, they're going to spout off the shit they believe because you've given them jurisdiction to be able to get away with saying it, and in their heads they think what they're saying is right. For all these years they've been told that they're wrong, now all of a sudden they're right. That being said, gender neutrality's got nothing to do with transgender, and unless your genetics or your there's some abnormality somewhere somewhere on your body, I don't really think you've got any real credence to be able to say that you are gender neutral. Chang puts it this way: sexuality is in and of itself not enough information to reveal a person's gender identity. Well, there is where the penny drops, because they've taken sex and gender, two different entities. So sex and gender are two different things, but who in their right mind thinks that sexuality determines somebody's gender identity? Nobody's ever said that, so you're debunking nothing. I tell you, your person, sexuality only reveals if you're homosexual or heterosexual. It has nothing to do with your gender identity, Mr. Shang. Ah, dear me. So with their separation completely of sex and gender, they get to kind of now go along this little merry-go-round of explaining what we never knew but they know about gender. This is what gender really is. We've known all along, we've known. And they then get to go on this tirade of making up crap. And along with it, listen to this. Most people tend to think that gender identity is hardwired. Gender identity doesn't exist. So, okay, already this paragraph's pointless, but they're making out it exists. They've made it center stage in their fucking little bubble they've created. Because most people identify with the gender that matches their sex. No, you don't. You mean they're normal? But large-scale research suggests gender is largely influenced by child environments. So everybody's wrong, bar the non-binaries and the transgenders. Imagine my shock. When boys and girls are born, their brains are virtually indistinguishable. Blah, 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 blah. From the day they're born, baby boys and girls are ushered into blue and pink worlds where they're dressed in different clothes and given different toys. As they get older, they begin to pay attention to gender-based markings. So, again, no, right? They keep bringing up the most mundane of things, just blue and pink and sports and girly things and all the rest of it, right? And, I can to some degree see their point, but they're ending... Their conclusion and what needs to change as a result of that is barking fucking mad. What is the only harm that could come from putting boys into a blue room and putting girls into a pink room is a kid that when he reaches a certain age that thinks, I don't like pink, or I don't like blue, right? Or when they get a bit older, I want to grow my hair long. No, little John, you will have short hair, right? Little things like that. But for... The only thing that this would harm is really on a larger scale would be people that suffer from a gender identity crisis or transgender people suffering from gender identity disorder. But to force this shit on the whole of society is where I draw the line. And of course, the last thing I'll leave on is that it doesn't just stop here with them making up crap as they go along. It genuinely affects children, as we all know.
Incredibly invested in what gender our child is. That's always the question, is a boy or girl. And so often we will say to people on the street that are incredibly invested in what gender our child is. That's always the question, is a boy or girl. And so often we will say to people, well, we don't know yet. We're waiting for Zoe to tell us.
How backwards is that? How backwards is that? So ordinarily you'd have a child, right? You're having a boy or having a girl, whatever it may be, or both, maybe having twins, who knows, right? Then they grow up, and as they get a bit older, they might be gay, they might not be gay, and then they turn into adults, and their life goes on, story ends, right? But not in this world, oh no. They want genderless children for them to choose themselves. Now tell me, what is the difference between forcing your child to be a gender that they're not, which you have seen in the past probably, right? So say you have a little boy, and that little boy, we'd ordinarily have grown up to be just fine, but you force that little boy to be a girl. Every aspect of their life, you force them to be a girl, right? And you take that scenario, and then you replace it with this one, and you know for a fact what your child is. So say you're having a boy, or a girl, we'll just go with boy, right? But you take a step back, and nothing's off limits. So then they start veering towards stereotypically girly things, and start acting girly in some aspects of their life. And you know full well that they're a boy, but you're just taking a step back and let them choose for themselves, right? And as they get older, problems could become quite apparent in that regard, because you've raised a blank canvas in your world, but in reality it's a boy that doesn't know who they are, and they're starting to act like a girl. What is the difference between that and forcing a child to be a gender that they're not, or the opposite gender? There isn't really a difference in that regard. But these assholes think they're doing a good thing. They think in the future their child's going to thank them for raising them gender neutral. I think they're going to get a shock.
I've been with my partner, my husband, for 15 years. Both my husband and I identify as transgender men. And
right, so presumably they're both transgender, and this is the cusp of the problem where I'm going to leave this video. Transgender people go for have gender identity disorder, which then leads them on to end up transitioning if they go completely through with all the things it entails, and then they live their life as the opposite sex, and their dysphoria eases to an extent. They've taken away transgenderism and they've made it seem as if it's fucking normal, and alongside it they have pushed this narrative and this ideology that gender is a spectrum, gender is up for debate, and gender exploration is integral to a child's upbringing, and any dysphoria, blah 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 blah, you know, that only existed because society forced you to confine to boxes. So we're trying to encourage the breaking of these boxes, or the exploration of out with these boxes. All the while, transgender people think this is the right way to go, because now they're told that, wow, it wasn't my mental illness, it was because we were being confined to boxes. And then the attitude is these transgender people, in order for their child to have a better upbringing than they had in regards to their social life and all the rest of it, they will just raise their child to be gender neutral on the off chance that he may very well be a tranny. All the while, the chances of that are very slim. All because they are transgender. You know? This is no different to some fanatical religious dude raising their child to be religious, but the difference is, of course, that this stuff can have complete detrimental effects. Peace.